as I mentioned in the intro, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is your third book. Necessary Trouble is
Overall?
your, yes.
Actually, it's
Oh,
7 overall.
seven overall. Oh my.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of two of your seven in particular. The one from '96, Mothers of Invention, Women of the Slave-Holding South in the American Civil War, and
Mhm.
your book from 2009, This Republic of Suffering Death in the American Civil War. And I bring up those two books because I mean, you're an historian. You write books about the Civil War and the American South. But what did you uncover by making yourself the subject of your book?
I wanted to write this memoir as not something that just came out of my memories, but instead situated me in a larger historical context. So part of what I uncovered was understanding better some of the forces that I had just thought were created by my family or were created by me, but I could see them as part of larger patterns in American life. For example, when I thought about my mother and her abnegation of herself in devotion to children and family, despite her misery at having to abnegate herself. It fits so perfectly with Betty Friedan's explanations of the forfeited self, a concept that was very widespread in the early 60s and had an enormous influence on white women of the middle and upper classes. So I could see that she wasn't just one person, but rather part of a larger pattern. And then there were things about my life that I could see were also part of larger patterns. One was Sputnik. I remember when Sputnik was sent into space by the Russians in 1957. I was absolutely terrified. I thought that it was going to fly over my house and drop bombs on me while I was sleeping. And so I decided I was only going to sleep on my back so I'd see the bombs before they fell. I've often thought how strange, what a peculiar little child I must have been to have such terror. But then when I began to read more widely, I realized that this was a transformative moment in American life. And for example, I found a wonderful quote from Stephen King, who's almost exactly my age. He has a birthday right around today or yesterday or right around here somewhere. And he felt the same way. He felt this was momentous because we had always been told America was the greatest. He phrases it as, I think, the fastest gun in the world, and we were going to shoot them all down and be in charge of the world like the cowboys he adored in westerns. And suddenly, it wasn't true. And suddenly, here was another reason to mistrust our parents, that they had fed us a seeming bill of goods about American dominance in science, technology, and every other dimension of life. And I believe that these disillusions, the one around Sputnik, the one around the parents had never told me that I couldn't go to school that I wouldn't be able to go to school if I weren't white, it instilled a kind of distrust. And I think the 60s come right out of that we felt betrayed by certain larger elements in what was told to us and what was reality. So those larger currents formed a basis for me to understand better, if that makes sense to you, understand
Yeah.
better where my life was going and how individual decisions were affected by these much bigger social forces.